2 carriers, more than 11,000 sailors, one regime that already watched American bunker busters crack open a mountain. The USS Abraham Lincoln has been pointing its flight deck at Iran since January 26, 2026. On February 12th, the order came down. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest warship ever built, was leaving the Caribbean and heading east. Its crew was notified that day. Their deployment, which had already stretched 8 months since they left Norfolk on June 24th of last year, was not ending. It was changing. The Ford crossed the Strait of Gibraltar on February 20th, 2026. By the time it joins the Lincoln in the Arabian Sea, the United States will have assembled something that has not existed in the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility for nearly a year. 2 fully operational carrier strike groups in the same theater, pointed at the same problem. What Tehran did not know, and what this buildup is designed to make impossible to ignore, is that those 2 groups are not equivalent. Together, they represent a different kind of math. Not just more planes, not just more ships. A qualitative threshold in sustained offensive capability that American planners believe Iran has no answer for. Understanding why requires understanding what happened 8 months ago and what Iran has done since. On the night of June 21st, 2025, 7B, 2 Spirit stealth bombers, departed Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri at midnight. They flew east for 18 hours, with minimal communication, refueling 3 times over the Atlantic and Mediterranean. A separate formation flew west, toward Guam, as a deliberate deception, drawing the attention of any intelligence service watching American movements. What Iran did not know was that the real strike package was already overhead, already committed, already undetectable. At approximately 5 in the afternoon Eastern Time, just before the bombers entered Iranian airspace, a U.S. submarine launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles at the Isfahan nuclear facility. The missiles flew low, terrain following, invisible to radar until impact. Then, at 6:40 in the evening Eastern, 2 in the morning, Tehran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU, 5.7 massive ordnance penetrators on Fordo. Each bomb weighed 30,000 pounds. Each contained 11 tons of TNT equivalent explosive power. Over the next 25 minutes, 14 of those bombs fell on 2 sites. Fordo, buried inside a mountain 29 kilometers north of Qom, and Natanz. Over 125 American aircraft participated in supporting that strike package. 75 precision-guided munitions were expended in total. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, called it the largest B-2 operational strike in United States history. He said, plainly, that Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see the bombers at all. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities sustained what the Pentagon described as extremely severe damage and destruction. A July 2025 Pentagon assessment found Iran's nuclear program had likely been set back approximately 2 years. 2 years is not forever. By February 2026, satellite imagery analyzed by the New York Times showed that Iran had rapidly repaired several ballistic missile facilities that were damaged in the June strikes. At the Isfahan nuclear complex, a new roof had been completed over previously destroyed structures by January 2026. The reconstruction work, according to analysts at the Institute for Science and International Security, used architectural features identical to the centrifuge production facility at Karaj, suggesting the new structure was designed to conceal rotor and bellows production from satellite observation. At Pickaxe Mountain, south of Natanz, excavation of a new underground facility was accelerating, being dug at an estimated depth of 80 to 100 meters into hard granite rock. The depth was chosen deliberately. Iranian engineers calculated that it might provide immunity against the same GBU, 5.7 bombs that had penetrated Fordo. At the Parchin military complex southeast of Tehran, analysts at ISIS documented the completion of what they called a concrete sarcophagus around a sensitive facility, with soil then added on top, making the site effectively unrecognizable as anything a satellite could positively identify. Iran's ballistic missile arsenal, which had been estimated at roughly 2,500 missiles before the June 2025 war, had shrunk to between 1,000 and 1,200 serviceable rounds by early 2026, after Iran expended approximately 550 missiles during the conflict, and Israel destroyed between a third and a half of its pre-war stockpile. But Iran had not stopped producing. European intelligence sources and a CNN investigation reported that since the reimposition of United Nations sanctions in September 2025, Iran had received multiple large shipments of sodium perchlorate from China, totaling approximately 2,000 tons, delivered to the port of Bandar Abbas. Sodium perchlorate is a critical ingredient in solid propellant production for ballistic missiles. Iran's missile inventory was, by early 2026, reportedly reconstituting toward approximately 2,000 available rounds. Iran was not surrendering. It was adapting. This is the context the USS Abraham Lincoln entered when it arrived in the Middle East on January 26, 2026. The Lincoln is a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Commissioned in 1989, 192 meters wide at the flight deck, and over 1,000 feet in overall length. Its full load displacement exceeds 100,000 tons. Its 4W nuclear reactors can drive it at speeds exceeding 30 knots without refueling for 20 to 25 years. Its total crew, including air wing personnel, is approximately 5,680 men and women. The carrier hosts Carrier Air Wing 9, which includes Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 314 flying F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters, Strike Fighter Squadrons, VFA-14 and VFA-15, one flying F/A-18E, Super Hornets, Electronic Warfare Squadron, VAQ-133, flying EA-18G Growlers, and Airborne Early Warning Squadron VAW-117 flying E-2D Hawkeyes. Its escort destroyers, the USS Frank E. Peterson Jr., USS Spruance, and USS Michael Murphy, are Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, each capable of launching Tomahawk cruise missiles and providing ballistic missile defense. The Lincoln is not on station as a symbol. It is on station as a loaded weapon. On February 3, 2026, that weapon was tested. A Marine Corps F-35C from Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 314 shot down an Iranian Shahed 139 drone that had approached the Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. The drone was taken down without incident. The kill was quiet, professional, unremarkable in its execution. The regime in Tehran logged it and drew its own conclusions. What Iran did not know yet was that the USS Gerald R. Ford was already moving. The Gerald R. Ford is not another Lincoln. It is the next generation of what a carrier is. It is 137 meters at the beam, 1,106 feet in overall length, displacing 110,000 tons under full load. Its A-1B nuclear reactors generate 3 times the electrical power of its Nimitz-class predecessors. Its electromagnetic aircraft launch system, designated EMALS, replaces the steam catapults that have been standard on American carriers since the 1950s. EMALS uses a linear synchronous motor running more than 100 meters along the flight deck to accelerate aircraft to launch speed, reducing mechanical stress, eliminating steam supply lines, and allowing the system to be precisely tuned for aircraft of different weights, including the unmanned platforms that will define the next decade of carrier aviation. The ship's complement is approximately 4,500 sailors when fully configured. Its original construction cost exceeded $13 billion. Its design calls for a sustained sortie rate of 160 missions per day, with surge capability approaching 270. The Ford's Air Wing, Carrier Air Wing 8, deploys a similar configuration to the Lincoln's FA-18E and FA-18F Super Hornets as the primary strike platforms, EA-18G Growlers for electronic warfare, E-2D, Advanced Hawkeyes for airborne early warning and coordination, and the capability to embark F-35C Lightning II fighters. Those Growlers are in the assessment of most military analysts, among the most important aircraft in any strike package against Iran. The EA-18G carries the AN, ALQ-99 and next-generation jamming pods capable of suppressing enemy radar and communications across a broad range of frequencies. Iran's layered air defense network, which includes systems derived from Russian and Chinese technology including the Bavar 373 long-range surface-to-air missile system, presents a real obstacle to conventional strike packages. Against aircraft that can be jammed and blinded before they can lock onto a target, that obstacle becomes significantly less decisive. The E-2D Advanced Hawkeye aboard both carriers extends surveillance hundreds of miles from the ship, coordinating strike packages, providing airborne command functions, and detecting potential incoming threats before they reach the outer defensive perimeter of the strike group. Its AN/APY-9 radar is described by the U.S. Naval Air Systems Command as the world's most advanced airborne early warning radar system. It can track hundreds of targets simultaneously, identify electronic signatures, and hand off targeting data in real time to every defensive system in the strike group. What two carriers provide that one cannot is duration. One carrier strike group can sustain a high tempo of operations for days before aircraft maintenance, ordnance replenishment, and crew fatigue begin to impose limits. Two carriers, operating in coordination, can sustain that tempo indefinitely, rotating aircraft, cycling through maintenance windows, covering different threat sectors, and maintaining continuous presence in contested airspace without pause. Military analysts estimate that two carriers in theater generate approximately 33% more sustained sorties than a single carrier deployment. When translated into strike missions against a country the size of Iran, which has dispersed its nuclear and missile infrastructure across dozens of sites in multiple geographic regions, that additional capacity is not marginal. It is potentially decisive. Iran's own doctrine is built around a different kind of logic. After decades of watching American power projection, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Iran's conventional military forces have developed a strategy based not on defeating American carrier aviation in open exchange, which they understand is not achievable, but on making the price of using that aviation unacceptably high. The IRGC fields an arsenal of anti-ship ballistic missiles, the Khalij Fars series, capable of maneuvering in terminal phase and designed specifically to strike moving surface targets. These are not cruise missiles that fly a predictable path. They fall from high altitude at speeds approaching Mach 15 in terminal phase, adjusting trajectory with radar and optical guidance to track a moving ship. The challenge of intercepting a maneuvering ballistic missile at those speeds, at those angles, is qualitatively different from intercepting a cruise missile, and Iran has invested heavily in this capability, precisely because American carrier strike groups have to be in the water to do their work. It maintains large stockpiles of cruise missiles. Its fast attack craft and mini-submarines can threaten the Strait of Hormuz. Its network of proxy forces in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and Syria can be activated to generate multiple simultaneous crises, forcing the United States and its allies to defend across an entire region while core strike operations against Iran are still ongoing. The American response to this doctrine is layered ballistic missile defense aboard the Arleigh Burke escorts. Continuous E-2D Hawkeye surveillance detecting launches the moment they occur, and a geographic deployment that keeps the carriers at distances that require maximum range from Iran's most capable systems, while remaining within strike range of Iranian territory. Iran's foreign minister, in a recent interview with Al Jazeera, stated explicitly that Iran does not have the ability to attack American territory and would therefore have to attack American bases in the region. He said that American bases are, in his phrase, spread all over the region. This is not a threat made for domestic consumption. Iran struck Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar in June 2025 with ballistic missiles after the Operation Midnight Hammer strikes. Thousands of American troops are stationed at that base. Iran's letter to the United Nations Security Council in February 2026 stated directly that all bases, facilities, and assets of the hostile force in the region would constitute legitimate targets in the context of Iran's defensive response, and that the United States would bear full and direct responsibility for any unpredictable and uncontrolled consequences What Iran's planners have to calculate against that threat posture is what those two carrier strike groups, plus the additional assets accumulating in the region, can actually do to their infrastructure before any retaliation lands. The Tomahawk cruise missiles aboard the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers escorting both carriers have a range exceeding 1,500 kilometers and carry conventional warheads of approximately 450 kilograms. They fly at subsonic speed, at low altitude, following pre-programmed terrain and navigating by GPS and Turcom terrain comparison mapping. They are not interceptable by most of the air defense systems Iran currently operates, at the density Iran would need to engage hundreds of them simultaneously. In June 2025, a single U.S. submarine launched more than 24 Tomahawk missiles at Isfahan. The combined destroyer and cruiser screens of two carrier strike groups in the Arabian Sea represent a Tomahawk inventory multiple orders of magnitude larger than that single submarine's launch. The F-35 Sea Lightning II, operating from the Lincoln, was designed for exactly the threat environment Iran presents. Its low observable airframe, its internal weapons carriage eliminating external radar cross-section contributions, its AN/APG-81 active electronically scanned array radar capable of tracking multiple air and surface targets simultaneously, and its electronic warfare systems allow it to operate in contested airspace that would be prohibitively dangerous for fourth-generation aircraft flying without the Growler support the EA-18G provides. The aircraft that shot down Iran's Shahed 139 drone on February 3rd did not announce itself before the shot. That is the point of the platform. The EA-18G Growlers aboard both air wings carry the next-generation jammer, which entered operational service in recent years, and represents a significant generational improvement over previous airborne electronic warfare pods. Against Iran's radar-guided surface-to-air missile systems, against its air defense command nodes, against the communications infrastructure that coordinates its network of proxy forces and its own military response, Growler jamming would arrive ahead of any physical strike package, degrading Iran's ability to see, communicate, and respond before the first weapon is released. This is not a new concept in American strike planning. What is new is the scale. Two carriers generating two full electronic warfare squadrons, operating simultaneously, coordinating with ground-based and space-based electronic warfare assets, covering a target set across a geography spanning hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. Iran's reconstruction activity since June 2025 has followed a pattern that American and Israeli analysts note carefully. Missile infrastructure has been repaired faster than nuclear infrastructure. The underground facilities, those dug into mountainsides and hardened against conventional penetrators, have received priority investment. The visible facilities at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan remain largely dormant to satellite observation in terms of active enrichment activity. The fissile material, approximately 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity that was present at those sites before Operation Midnight Hammer, has not been definitively accounted for. American and Israeli officials have stated they are uncertain what became of it. Iran may have moved the stockpile before the strikes. If so, where it went remains an open question. What Iran's reconstruction priorities reveal is not what the regime wants the world to think. They reveal what the regime is afraid of. The rush to harden underground facilities, to dig new ones deeper than the GBU-57 is calculated to reach, to conceal rooftops from satellites, to disperse activity across sites the IAEA has not formally inventoried, is the behavior of a government that does not believe its current nuclear infrastructure is safe and is attempting to build a dispersed, concealed, deeper replacement before the next round of strikes arrives. That assessment, if accurate, defines the problem the two-carrier deployment is intended to solve. You can bomb a facility. You cannot bomb the knowledge inside the scientists who built it. You can destroy centrifuge halls. You cannot destroy the institutional memory of a program that has been running, in some form, for 30 years. The nuclear question is therefore not only a military question. It is a question about what combination of sustained military pressure and diplomatic leverage can produce an agreement that addresses the program in a way that is verifiable and durable. One carrier can enforce a message, two carriers begin to enforce a deadline. Diplomatic activity has not stopped. The United States and Iran met in Oman. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told CBS News in February 2026 that a diplomatic path remains viable. Iran rejected U.S. calls to halt uranium enrichment entirely, but indicated willingness to discuss the level and purity of enrichment and the possibility of a regional consortium arrangement. Iran's deputy foreign minister told the BBC that the ball is in America's court to prove that they want to do a deal. Those are not the words of a regime in complete control of its situation. They are the words of a regime that has watched a second carrier cross the Strait of Gibraltar on February 20th and is doing the arithmetic. The arithmetic is not comfortable for Tehran. Between 1,000 and 1,200 serviceable ballistic missiles, down from 2,500 before June 2025. Approximately 100 mobile launchers, down from nearly 500. Nuclear sites that are dormant and partially concealed because they are damaged and the regime is afraid to restart overt enrichment, while satellites are watching and negotiations are nominally ongoing. A population that put the greatest sustained domestic pressure on the regime in a half-century of its existence, with anti-government protests drawing international attention through late 2025 and into 2026. An economy weakened by decades of sanctions, running its currency at all-time lows, unable to provide the standard of living that might otherwise blunt popular discontent. What Iran holds in its hand is a threat posture that is real but degraded. The IRGC's fast attack craft remain in the Strait of Hormuz. The Shahed series drone inventory, which Iran has been actively rebuilding, can be dispatched in large numbers toward regional targets. The proxy network from Hezbollah to Houthi forces in Yemen retains some capability, though Hezbollah in particular was significantly damaged during the June 2025 conflict. These asymmetric tools can impose costs. They cannot, by any military analysis, alter the outcome of a sustained American air campaign conducted from two carrier strike groups and supported by the full range of long-range strike assets the United States has positioned in the region. Trump has said, publicly, that failure to reach a deal would be, in his words, very traumatic for Iran. He said he expected the timeline to move quickly. His energy secretary said the United States will stop Iran's nuclear arms ambitions one way or the other. Netanyahu has privately received assurances, according to reporting from the Times of Israel, that the United States will back Israel if it decides to strike Iran in the event nuclear talks collapse. The Strait of Hormuz is 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Approximately 20% of the world's traded oil moves through it. Any serious interdiction operation there sends oil prices toward levels that trigger recession conditions across Europe and Asia. That economic weapon is real. It is also double-edged. An Iran that mines the strait and collapses global oil markets is an Iran that has made every energy-importing nation on Earth into a stakeholder in stopping it. China, which imports more Gulf oil than any other country, is not indifferent to what happens in that channel. Russia calculates. So does every government that currently benefits from access to Gulf energy moving freely. The USS Abraham Lincoln is in the Arabian Sea, approximately 200 miles off the coast of Oman, according to satellite imagery from February 15th. The USS Gerald R. Ford crossed the Strait of Gibraltar on February 20th and is closing the distance. 6 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers escort the two carrier groups in theater, along with independent destroyers including USS Roosevelt and USS Bulkley in the Mediterranean, USS Delbert D. Black in the Red Sea, and USS Mitchell in the Persian Gulf. More than 120 American aircraft have reportedly been repositioned to European and Middle Eastern bases within the past several weeks. Tanker aircraft numbers at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia have increased. E-3C Sentry airborne warning and control aircraft have been deployed forward. F-15E Strike Eagles of the 494th Expeditionary Fighter Squadron, veterans of previous anti-drone and missile operations in the region, are back in theater. Iran built its nuclear mountain because it believed depth was security. It believed that if it dug far enough, hardened enough, dispersed enough, no adversary could reach the program's core. Operation Midnight Hammer cracked the first version of that theory open in 25 minutes. Now Iran is building a deeper mountain. America is building something that doesn't have to go the same way twice.